Yeah, but it looks like a penis.
Wait, why? What's this? What's the white? Hey guys, we have an all-new HBFIT TV episode, Plant Life Edition. We are here with Summer Rayne Oakes. Summer Rayne?
Summer Rayne, yeah.
Okay, I thought it was a plural.
No, Summer Rayne Oakes. Oakes is, I guess, the plural, technically.
But it's crazy that your name is Summer Rayne Oakes because you are literally the queen of plants. Like, you don't meet someone who has a name that is also their profession very often. So.
Everybody always thinks it's a stage name. I get it like all the time, but I'm like so used to it by now. But yeah, I mean, it was, it was kind of that era, I suppose, you know, when parents got a little crazy with their kids' names.
Totally. Well, Summer is also the founder of homesteadbrooklyn.com, which you should definitely check out, which is a website where you can learn about how to take care of your plants.
Yeah, indoor, outdoor gardening, like really anything that really connects us back to nature. And I'm just like, that's kind of my MO in life. I really want to help people like get back in sync with, what makes them healthy and what brings them like wellness in life. And a lot of times that happens to be like the stuff that we surround ourselves with or don't surround ourselves with. And for me, I think plants have been one of those things that allow me to feel like I'm quote unquote like at home.
Right. And by the way, this is Kippy,
yes.
her chick.
I'll bring her out.
Who lays eggs almost every single day, which is wild.
Hyper local eggs.
Domestic urban chick. Hello. We haven't really. Oh, okay. All right then.
She's very territorial.
Okay, so some of you might be thinking, okay, we're clearly at some amazing warehouse or something like that, but no, we're actually in Summer's bedroom. So can you tell us a little bit about how you decided that you wanted to transform your bedroom into a beautiful, like, would you say this is a stadium garden or?
Yeah, I mean, this actually used to be a closet.
Okay.
And I, believe it or not, the idea of a closet garden the seed was planted, every pun intended, when a magazine had called and they said, oh, we're looking to kind of transform people's closets into kitchen grow gardens. And I was like, wow, that's such a great idea. Literally the next day I got like rid of all my clothes. I got an armoire, a vintage armoire, and I was like, I'm ready for you.
Oh my God.
And then they just like literally like fell off the face of the map. And I was like, oh, what happens? So actually, for me it was like, this was a better use of my space, I felt, because these are great southwest facing windows, which means for anybody who doesn't know which way your windows face, get your compass on your iPhone or whatever phone you have and see, what direction it's facing, because then that will help you determine like what kind of plant is probably best for that space.
Mm-hmm. So can you tell us a little bit about the systems that you put in place to make sure that you had like beautiful vivacious plants?
Yeah, and I mean it's a good question too, because we're in like the middle of winter and these plants are fairly green
I can
and lush.
hardly keep anything alive. So the fact that you've got like all of this going on is really inspiring also to me to get my plant life together.
Well, I mean the good news is that like all of this stuff is very DIY. Like I'm nothing is like super sophisticated. So if you take like a close look here, and even if you like put your finger here, you'll see that these are like these things called humidity mats.
Oh yeah.
And so these plants tend to like to be, I have a lot of like prayer plants and philodendrons, and I have some gesnerids, which are African violet style plants. These like to be a little bit on the moist side. So having the humidity mats allows them to kind of pull up water. And these humidity mats are like a couple bucks. Like it's not anything too expensive. And it allows me to like water the humidity mat underneath, and then so I don't have to water each individual plant.
Right, because it's all getting it from underneath.
Yeah, from the root zone, which is like perfect. And then I have a humidifier here, and again, this is just to kind of keep up the humidity. You have plants clumped together, which is another good technique to kind of keep up humidity, because as you know, in the winter months, like the heat is just like really dry heat. It's bad for us. It's bad for our sinuses, and having plants in the house helps because it naturally builds up its own humidity. but then having a humidifier to help with like the plants itself is also like really great. And you should have probably humidity in between 40 and I would say 60%, like, and usually in winter months because of the dry heat, it's between 25 and 35.
Okay.
And then that's when like we dry out and our plants dry out.
Got it. Okay. This is your guest room office.
Yes, this is my work room. Actually, this becomes my bedroom when the guests sleep over, and I give the guests the green wall room.
Okay, got it. So this room is a bit colder as
Yes.
when we walked in here. So can you tell us a little bit about how one can deal with their plants in the winter when they're dealing with drafty windows, a little bit of a cooler climate? Like, what do you suggest? Like, what maybe are like the top 3 tips that you could give someone who's not living in sunny California?
Well, that's a good question because I deal with it all the time. I live in a very drafty, kind of old apartment. As you sensed, it's chilly in here. And certain plants just can't deal with the cold. So what happens is I usually pull those plants away from the windows. Like even if it's like just a foot away from the window, even though it's getting less light, it's not getting those like veritable gusts of wind. And that's important. Now, some plants will drop their leaves, and I have some plants that look like, just kind of turgid stems. Oftentimes that's common for a lot of plants, like especially succulents, that they'll just drop their leaves and then in spring and summer they'll actually go flourish again. So I think it's important also for people to know that if plants do drop their leaves, especially if they're succulents, that they're probably still okay. Just kind of move the stem and make sure that it's still turgid. It still has like life in it. And chances are in spring and summer it'll be fine again. So don't like toss it out, because sometimes we see it and we're like, oh, that plant didn't do so well, I'm going to toss it out.
Right.
But that's not the case for
Okay.
the majority of plants. And then the other thing you could do is like, you could also line your windows, which typically I would do in winter, and I haven't done it this winter. So I'm a little bit like, that's a no-no for me. But even if it's just like plastic for your windows, that helps. Or having a shade, like I have a shade in there that I could pull down during at night, and it kind of blocks out any kind of the wind.
Got it. Okay.
Which is really good. And then also same thing with the cold draftiness. If you have heaters, I have a lot of friends who have like had their plants on the heaters, and then the heaters would kick on and then the plant just died because it got baked. So just be like mindful, that it's not directly in a heater and directly not in the cold temperature, because just a reminder, a lot of these plants that we cover our homes with, like if you go to Costa Rica or if you go to Peru or Brazil, you'll often see our houseplants out there.
Right.
Because that is their natural environment. So
Right.
you want to still try to keep that kind of 60 to 72 kind of middle temperature, turning down your heat in the winter just a little slightly, because typically those plants also have a little lower temperature at night. And so that's why a lot of these plants do survive in our house, is because we do have that kind of perfect temperature, and it's just like kind of mimicking that for the plants that we surround ourselves with.
Got it. Can you tell us a little bit about, you mentioned earlier about pruning and when to prune and when to not prune. And you just said like, oh, well, if they're shedding their leaves, and you might think, oh, the plant's dead, but like really it's going to thrive again in a couple months, and you just kind of have to be patient. And what I'm getting here is that like it kind of seems complicated to have all these plants, but at the same time, I think patience is probably key. So how do you know when to prune, and what signs can you read that your plants are giving you?
So I would typically prune my plants in, like I was sharing about my Ficus lyrata, which is this giant fig behind you. It's a fiddly fig. And it actually had way more leaves on the spring and summer, and oftentimes in the winter it will shed its leaves, and then I have to cut it back in around May or June. So it's growing in May or June. So that's when I would want to prune it, because I want to see the growth happen. And if I cut it now, it's not growing.
Okay, so for instance, you've got like a yellow leaf up there. You're just gonna let that leaf live until May, June.
Or fall off. Or if you see,
but you're not taking it off yourself.
Yeah, I've noticed that like if the tree leaves start to get brown, it's a couple different things. One, they're very sensitive to touch. So if you constantly brush up against a leaf, then chances are it's going to be brown and fall off eventually. The second thing is when it gets crispy edges, typically it's a lack of humidity. So plants will start to get brown. The calatheas in the other room will often get brown around their leaves. The third thing that it could be, especially if it's around leaf tips, is that it's collecting too much salt, and that could either happen through impure water.
Okay.
So I actually filter my water or give my plants distilled water, and then it could also mean that if you go on a fertilizing schedule and you're putting too much fertilizer in, it'll often concentrate and start to create these like necrotic spots, which are like dead spots on your plant. And if you have a brown necrotic spot on your plant, you could just kind of cut that off, because that plant is not going to go back. If there's a yellowing leaf and it could be a sign of like, oh, maybe I need to fertilize it, or maybe I need to water it more or something like that, then that leaf might actually go back to being normal.
Got it.
But once it's brown, flush it down.
Oh my God, hilarious. Okay, cool. Amazing. That was really, really helpful. All things I need to be doing at home.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to learn, but I think like once you start to understand kind of like what a plant has to share with us, like it's fun, and it's like having another member of your family, and I don't know, it's just really brought me a lot of joy, and it's infectious. Like once you have a few and you want more, and then people get excited about it, and I'm all for that.
And I feel like the plants also thrive from being around other plants.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You've got so many plants in here. I'm sure there's a reason why you have specific plants in your kitchen versus in your bedroom or your office. So can you tell us a little bit about the plants that you have in here and what you use them for, if anything, like medicinal or digestion-wise?
So, part of the plants that I have in here, is also dictated by the light. So I have a northeast facing window here, and I have actually some mirrors. You can't maybe tell, but I have some mirrors that kind of bring in a little bit more of the light to kind of expand the light. So oftentimes, mainly more in the summer than the winter, I'll have a lot more herbs growing in the kitchen. I have a couple now. I'll see if you could, I like playing this game of like, can you recognize the smell?
Oh my God, wait, it's like pepper. What is this?
Hold really on. Strong, right?
It smells like burnt rubber.
Interesting.
Cumin?
That's curry.
This is curry?
That is a true curry leaf right there. So oftentimes when you have like a curry leaf, you'll put it on the stove top and it'll like crackle and pop with the fresh leaf. And it is so redolent. Yeah, that kind of like burnt kind of smell. It's that strength of the like a curry. And that's not commonly grown, obviously indoors. That grows into a large tree.
Wow.
But it is incredible to cook with. So I do like having some ready to eat herbs in the kitchen so I could cook a little bit more. In the summer, like I said, or the spring, I tend to have a little bit more around the area.
Right.
Like I'll put them right around here. But most of the time, this is like beautiful kind of light that just comes in. That's a nice consistent light throughout the day. So oftentimes this is like a perfect place for lots of houseplants. So I tend to, line my whole kitchen with ones that want a little bit more of that gentle light. So like ferns, some of my philodendrons. I have some peperomia, which are kind of like my favorite, like little plants, little peperomia plants. And
so cute.
Yeah, and then just kind of like, I love little cute planters too. Kind of, Kippy doesn't like anything with faces.
No?
No, when she likes to eat leaves. But yeah, I like to, I think it helps putting plants in cute planters because it makes you like recognize that they're still there.
Right. That's actually a really good point.
Yeah. I think for anybody who's like interested in plants, I think it's really just about like starting with one and like learning from mistakes if you make them, and you really don't become a good gardener until you start to garden.
Right.
And I think that's like an important thing to kind of learn. And even if you don't have like an outdoor setting, even if you feel like you live in a cave, there's always ways that you could augment light in your home.
Right.
So just giving people like the knowledge and the enthusiasm and the passion to start to grow things, because I think that it really affects the way that you live in a positive way.
We love positive living. So on that note, thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of HBFIT TV with Summer Rayne. Don't forget to check her stuff out at homesteadbrooklyn.com. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, you can do so below. Leave us your comments. Let us know if you go and pick up some plants and put them in your house. We'd love to hear about it. Tag us on Instagram. Thanks for watching.